So today we welcome Kendra Harrell. Did I get that right? Yes.
You did.
We did practice before we started to our Lovefly podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
No, likewise. Yeah. So tell us all about you.
Absolutely. I live in Tennessee, so I am in America. I honestly, from a flying perspective and just to travel, I spent the majority of my life before 2014 traveling and living in other countries, visiting. I truly traveled all the time, and I love that. And the majority of the reason I did it was to serve in other countries and worked in children's homes and different things like that, and loved it. I'm one of 6 girls, so I have 5 incredible sisters, and I'm an aunt to 22 kiddos. And so just experience.
How many? 22.
22. I know, so many. But experiences matter to me. Yeah, it is expensive. I started changing those Christmas gifts to experiences and be like, come on, you can come hang out with me, Kendra. But yeah, so experiences always have meant a lot to me. And I am a photographer and business coach for my career and love it. But it sometimes had travel in it. I host retreats, and that did travel. And when the fear got a hold of me, that started to shrink smaller. And so, but yeah, now I feel like I'm speaking from a place of overcoming and victory. And I think my victory story sounds a little bit different than just the win. My victory looks like still having some uncomfortable emotions and feelings when I fly, but doing it anyway.
Yeah, I like that. So just out of noticing this, what sort of retreats did or do you do?
Yeah, so I am a business coach for small businesses. And so oftentimes I just get us all in the same room and just serve from a business perspective and kind of just retreat away and get out of the noisiness of the world and just quiet down. And oftentimes we shoot if it's all photographers and do sessions, and I kind of teach the experience through that. But yeah, it's the best.
Okay. I've just been nosy. Just when you said retreat. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. So tell us. So yeah, up until 2014, you were traveling around. Something happened, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I unfortunately have just kind of like a traumatic event, a series of events that had nothing to do with flying, but flying was the first thing I did after the events. And so anybody that's kind of in the trauma nervous system space knows there's, the saying that the body keeps the score. And unfortunately for me, I was living in Africa at the time, got really, 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 really sick. That created some just anxiety. I was far away from any civilization to get home. And so it was about a 5-day journey to get home. And my body correlates a lot of that feeling with flying, because that's what I was doing to get home. So that safety feeling, right, was when it was interrupted. I never had a thought before that time in 2014, literally could not have cared if I sat backwards on the floor in the galley of an aircraft. I didn't care. Like, I just never had a fear. But ever since that event, the first time after I flew, I had like my first panic attack on board. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so weird. And the second time after that event in 2014 was the time I told myself I'll never fly again.
Okay. So where do you think the panic attack bit came from? And what's your theory on that?
So I genuinely do believe that our body keeps the score. And I think that because I had been so anxious in Africa and so unwell, so very, very, very sick, and to get back to America, I was just so nervous. I was by myself with a group of people, but no family or friends in Africa, that I kind of felt like, oh, maybe I'll never get, like, I was just nervous that I wasn't going to get home to my comfort. And so I think what happened is my body correlated the fear of lack of control. I didn't feel safe, right? Like I just wanted to get home. And that all happened with the processing Africa to Dubai, to DC, to Atlanta, then to Nashville, which, I mean, it was a very long journey to get home, all while processing a very scary time of being sick in a country that I couldn't get the assistance that I needed. Yeah. And I just think that that's where my body correlated. Nothing about the flying itself, right? It was not that. It was just I processed a really difficult and experienced a really difficult thing while on an aircraft. And that is the sensations that began. Now, most people, like, my scariest part is when they, close the cabin door. I will, like, oh, it's all like that. If I let myself think on the things of, like, because I think that's what I did on the way home from Africa, right?
Yes. Wow. Okay, so we got a little bit of buffering there. I think it might be an internet thing my end, but audio was fine. But there's a few times in the video, so if you watch it back, you're a bit like, maybe I will stew to you.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's, that I can understand. It's attached itself to flying, maybe feeling like you're trapped in somewhere. Who knows how the brain works, but
sure. Yeah.
So what happened next? What was the impact on you?
Yeah, here's the thing that I think if I can encourage anybody with is we talk to ourselves the most, right? So if we tell ourselves enough times, I'm never going to fly again, or I can't do this, or I'm not going to do it, you're going to believe yourself. You're going to believe yourself, like flat out. You got to think I was hundreds of flights. I have an uncle that's a captain for American Airlines. I've got 3 aunts that are flight attendants. My grandfather retired from working on the mechanics of American Airlines out of Tulsa. I mean, it ran deep. And after hundreds of flights, I just told myself one day, enough times, over and over again over the years, I wasn't going to fly again. And so, honestly, to be someone who lived in other countries, thought they'd be a missionary, growing up, and all these different, like, I was going to live overseas, right? Like, I never thought about flying being anything that I would have a fear attached to. I had convinced myself I'd never fly again. And to be honest, I am somebody who, put an obstacle in front of me in a way that I need to overcome it, where I can't negotiate with myself, and I'll do it. And I got a new job, and travel was part of it. So,
okay.
I was like, do I keep my job? And then I fly.
Yeah. So tell us what you've done I assume you're flying now because you have to. And it doesn't sound like it's a perfect finished article. But talk us through your process of starting to overcome your fear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have since moved on from the job that required traveling, and now I work for myself, but I still travel a good bit. But what I started to do, to be honest, my beginning process was messy, but it was my effort and it was what I tried to do. But it was very, very saturated in stipulations. That was one thing in the Lovefly course that if people get the chance to take that was really freeing, is I didn't want to find freedom in flying because I just had it within stipulations, right? Like, oh, I could fly if it was this type of aircraft, and if I sat in these seats, and if I had somebody with me, and if I got there, like, that's not true freedom. It might be a gateway to start, but it's not going to be true freedom, right? And so that is how I started to fly again, is I would only fly, Southwest. I could only pre-board. I could only do these, and that, honestly, it worked for about a year. And then in 2022, I swore it off again. And I just said, okay, I'm not going to do it. Like, it was just, I felt like I could never fully enjoy it. 2023 is when I first came across Lovefly, and I'm forever grateful for it, because I think one of the freedoms that comes with a community like this is that you recognize you're not alone. And while everything that you're feeling as somebody who may have an experience, a fear of flying, it may be common, but it doesn't have to be normal. Like, it doesn't have to be hard normal to feel that way. And so it was cool to get into a room with other people that it was common. Okay, they felt this way as well, but we can shift it and we can change it. And so the encouraging part for me was, just as quickly as my brain decided to associate fear with flying, whatever reasons, whether it's a story that somebody hears or my experience or whatever it could be, maybe they've experienced their own not fun experience while flying. So it changed their brain to become change your brain to not be fearful, right? And to heal that and to work out of that. And so that's what I did. And I can go ahead and I can kind of chat through some of the things that I personally did. I was telling Paul, like, I genuinely believe that the majority of the work happens way before we actually get into the arena to fly, right? Like once we were on the aircraft, like there are certainly things that we can do and I will chat through, but a lot of my work that I did to heal that part came before I ever even got on an aircraft. And honestly, before something was scheduled.
So Kendra, before you give away the good one, so where did the determination come from to sort of get past this, you think?
Yeah, again, I'll go back to that stubborn, committed part of me. Before, just in case, a trigger warning for talking about infant loss, but I lost two nieces, one in April of 2019, one in January of 2023. And my niece I lost in April 2019. Her name is Isla, and she was named after the Emerald Isle, so of Ireland. And for her 5th birthday, which was just this past April, my little sister wanted to spend her 5th birthday honoring and celebrating and just being close to Ireland. She had never been. She was just obsessed with, like, just loved it. And so she was going, and there wasn't any amount of fear that was going to stop me from being present for somebody that I loved. And unfortunately, over the years, I didn't put myself into that category of somebody that I loved, but my sister was there, and that helped usher me back into that category myself. But so yeah, how I got the determination was literally refusing to allow my fear to overcome my life. And I think so often people can try to shift and change from a place of shame and like, oh, I should be doing this. And instead I just was like, hey, this is my truth. This is where I'm at, but I get to change this. I get to, and there are resources. And I will say, you're going to hear me talk about this, but my biggest thing, my goal was not to love flying. My goal was to be willing to embrace any sensation that came with it so that I could live my life.
Yeah.
Which is a difference. Now, I hope one day, yes, maybe I do just really have zero fear. And to be honest, my flight home from Ireland, I had none. I was really great. But my goal wasn't to jump on the first flight and to be like, yeah, like whatever, let's just have popcorn and talk. That wasn't like, it was that I am fully capable of feeling any sensation and not allowing it to determine the direction my life goes. And so my sister's trip allowed me, and to honor my niece Isla, I was able to do that. Yeah.
That's a hell of a thing, a target, isn't it? To have to sort of,
absolutely. Yeah. And it was one of those that, and by the way, nobody needs this depth of a story, but having our eyes set on an anchor of the why is really, really big, right? You don't need this as big of a story as maybe I feel, or my sister, or whatever it might be. It's maybe not your Ireland, but what is it? Is it presence on vacation with your children? Is it going and celebrating a friend that she gets to look back and see that you were present during whatever it is. But when you have that and say, wait, I want that more than I want fear to overtake me, you've got a goal set.
Okay. Yeah. So tell us what you did then, in order, starting when exactly. Give us the secret sauce.
Listen, to be honest, I'll put all my cards on the table. I'm pretty sure I found Lovefly because I Googled fear of flying course book. I was ready to just literally do anything. I honestly had thought about even starting counseling, and going, and I actually, one of the things that I really love is with the 30-day course is just that topic of we can talk through everything, or well, let's also just go do some work, right? And that was where I was at, is okay, I want to find something. I came across Lovefly. I started honestly just listening to the podcast, just 1 or 2 episodes that I'd seen. I don't know if I found the Facebook first or the podcast. Regardless, they were very close in tandem, immediately. And by the way, this was probably 8 months before the scheduled flight. We just did this in April of 2024, so just a month ago. And the summer of 2023 probably, is when I really started to dive into things. And really what I wanted to do at that point was just gain evidence. I think one of the things we can do is fear can kind of breed in lack of knowledge, right? When you don't know something, you begin to make up your own truth about it. And I didn't want to make up my own truths about flying because, to be honest, I was on the wrong side of the fence to be making up truths about flying. It was only going to be out of fear. And so I wanted to let other people who were more knowledgeable make the truths about flying I was going to choose to believe. Mine weren't trustworthy, right? I was influenced by immense fear. And so that takes some vulnerability, that takes some trust to say, let me choose to believe your words over flying versus mine. But I recognize they were more established. And we do that in everyday life in all sorts of categories. But so I found the Facebook group and podcast. The other thing that I do is, and I use it very differently, but I loved to be on flight radar and watch flights as evidence of the safety, right? To watch them land and to go, or to watch them change routes and to still land, and like just the beauty of how many people are in the sky, and that they're landing safely every single day.
Yeah, I always think it's like a secret. I mean, I don't do it, but I know I can understand it, 'cause it's like a little secret window, isn't it, to all this stuff that's going on that you wouldn't see, you don't know. But right above you right now, there's people flying around.
All 100%. And here's the thing, to your point, you have to know which tools and resources are good for you and which point in your journey. For me, I knew I was able to use that app in a way that put me in awe. I was just in awe. So it was good evidence to me. It was just like, I didn't, look at specific details and, all of that. It was just like, wow, like, look at all of these. And I'm a feeler. I'm a photographer that captures families and motherhood, and so I just always thought of the stories. And I think, where are they all going? And, where, like, and sometimes it's heavy things and sometimes it's easy things, but that's kind of how I started to flirt with the line of getting better, was let me listen to the podcast. Let me get on this Facebook group. Let me look at flight radar. Let me kind of stay in awe. I think the other...
Like, when I ask, without sort of sound like I'm fishing, but maybe it is, I don't know. But what made you think Lovefly was a good thing for you? Because there's lots of things out there that you can go towards. What made you settle on this?
Yeah, I actually love this question. Lovefly is just a community that serves, and you put the help out there without, just from a sharing posture versus a selling posture. I never felt like being a part of Lovefly was only good for me if I purchase something. I don't know. I've seen other things that it was solely just a purchasing thing. And I always connect from a sharing standpoint and a serving standpoint versus a selling standpoint. And I think by sharing and serving, you sell, right? And so that's where it happened. That's why I ended up buying and purchasing the course. But it was because there was an immense value that said, hey, I'm not the only person that feels this way. Because if you've isolated that in a bad way, but if you are in a family of flyers that they don't care at all and they're totally good, well, then you can truly feel like you're just the outlier and that no one else could ever have these thoughts. And it's not true. And so to get yourself in a room of like-minded people that are also committed to change, that's completely that's the service. That's what's incredible. And so, yeah, the second I got in there I was just seeing the same people commenting and the way the service and just like the cheering on of others. Like, I've been that person now where I'm like, we've got you, we're watching, you're going to be great. Like, because it's just so sweet to be in that. Yeah. Yeah. And so I saw that, and that's why I stayed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was just curious because when people come through, I always think, why do people join me? Like this week this is remarkable, like to think when we first started, there was like a few a week joining the Lovefly Facebook group, but now, like this week, now 247 join, but in 1 week, and you just go, where are you all coming from? What do you want?
Yeah.
And it's terrifying, though. It's great, but it's also, sort of having to lean into it, because if I actually thought about it, I probably would sleep.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, it does. And that's the point, I think, that makes Lovefly so incredible, is that is 247 people who thought, I need to go search for an answer. I'm having these feelings, rise up. And what I do think that Lovefly is it is kind of that safety net that, like, as they're like, fear to like come in, they're going to fall into a group of people who get it, but that are also going to serve them and call them to higher. And I think literally flying higher, but I do think that it's just going to be able to
let that go. All right.
yeah. Right. But it really is going to I think it's going to be great. And it's a support. And oftentimes that's what we need. Again, we listen to our thoughts the most. And so I'm so grateful that I have other people's thoughts in the Lovefly group that could help usher me into my own new thoughts that I was willing to tell myself.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done some remarkable stuff. So you mentioned earlier about all the pre-work that you've had to do.
Yeah.
Well, and you've done your list. Let's have some of that then. This is the gift back by the sound of it.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so I think the biggest thing is, prior to flying or even in between flights, we have to continue to put the work in. So what that looked like for me is I determined my why. So what was my why of traveling? Not specific for just each trip, but like, why did I want to travel? For me, it was like, I wanted to see more of God's creation. I wanted to not misplace fear. Right? Fear is good for the time it's needed, right? Yeah. It does prompt us into like action, but when it's misplaced, man, it can really take over. And so I wanted freedom from that. And then what it looked like from some ongoing work was obviously the podcast. Sometimes we have to borrow other people's victories to help us believe in our own,
that's nice.
Yeah.
Borrow other people's victories. What a soundbite.
And so
that's just leave that one. Good. No, go on, carry on.
just let it simmer. But yeah, I think that's what the podcast does. I think that's what the Facebook post can do, is you can see other people's victories and imagine yourself in them for your own life. And so the podcast, and the biggest thing was being mindful of my words, how I was talking about the experience, or using words like, I am so fearful, or I just can't do it. Oh, that's so heavy to carry around, and it's such a burden to carry. And then one of the questions, I'll slightly give it away, and at the beginning of the Lovefly course, is just, what do you lose, if you fly? And one of the things that came to mind is like, man, I lose that negative self-talk where I told myself over and over that I can't do it. And so I started to be mindful, and that may look like, I have a fear of flying, but I'm working on it. Right? Or I'm not flying yet, right? Like, let's just add just these little things, because those are a lot less heavy than to just when I was just sitting and I'm not flying, I can't do it, or I'll never fly again, or I guess I just won't see other parts of the world. Like, man, those are just, it just wasn't good. And I did read books and post in the Facebook group and stories of, the other part was just positive stories of travel.
Yes.
Right, like, just good. Not hard work, but just good. The other thing was exposure therapy. I did go sit at the airport. Those ones took a little bit more out of me, right, to go, but I chose all types of weather. I wanted to see that the planes did not change if it rained at all than when it was sunny. Like, it was totally, yeah. And so it wasn't like I just wanted to see him on sunny days. It was like, no, I want to see him on the yucky days too, because that's when we can psych ourselves out. And so just simply looking up the viewing area and at the airport, it was great. Used flight radar.
Do you think you did that?
4 times over the about 8 months. I did 2 of them alone, 1 with a friend, and then I took my nieces and nephews the 4th time, and it was wonderful. And what was really cool is my brain went back to that when we took off for Ireland. It really did. It went back to be like, oh, it feels this way here, but like, I watched that thing just glide so easily last week. right? And so it helped a ton. I will say this. I also took a just because flight in February. My trip to Ireland was in April. So 2 months prior by myself, I just flew from Nashville to Atlanta. It's a 36-minute flight. I just flew down and then flew back all in the same day. I intentionally flew back at night because our overnight flight to Ireland, I wanted to feel the sensations.
Good.
It was a little brutal in some ways as far as like all the sensations, but it was so incredible because again, the flight that like I needed to make sure I got on in April, I had already experienced every sensation and I already had a victory under my belt. And if I, and maybe if I didn't do well, whatever well is, everyone has their own definition of that. In February, I maybe would have tried again or something like that, but I didn't. I had a victory and it was wonderful. And I didn't get that, walking down the jetway thing. I had already done that just 6 weeks prior. And so that was one way. The biggest work I feel like I did though was mindset, recognizing and seeing that our thoughts are like, if we see them like soil and being like, what can grow in that thought? And for me, I was only willing to have like good soil when it came around to flying. And so I only wanted to say good
You're like
things.
the metaphor queen, aren't you? Come on.
I do think that is the way that my brain works. Yes.
Yeah.
That's so funny. People often say that you and metaphors, you and analogies, but yeah, I didn't think like, again, if I said like, oh, I don't know that I can do that, or I don't know, maybe that flight's too far. Well, what grows in that? Like, what am I supposed to do with that now? Now I've said that over myself. What am I supposed to do with it? Versus, a different thought of like, yeah, I'm so excited to get to Ireland and experience that's it. A lot can grow there. Yes. So that was, by the way, I did that in my whole life that helped set me up to be able to fly without such an overcoming fear. I mentioned this too at the beginning. I also pre-decided what I was going to believe as true. Was I going to let that flying was safe be negotiable? And if I did, well, then it was going to stay negotiable. And I would find myself in this constant high and low of my relationship with flying. But if my anchor was that flying is safe and I'm learning how it's safe, well, then I stop negotiating with every news article, fearful story, this scenario. I can hear that and hold space for it, but the only thing I'm doing with that information is taking it back to the anchor that it is safe, and I'm just going to continue to think on that. If it's negotiable, that's exhausting, right? Yeah, so I had to pre-decide that.
I like that.
Yeah, and that didn't mean that truth doesn't change whether you believe it or not. So flying is always going to be safe, whether we believe it or not. But I'm going to pre-decide to believe that the truth is true.
How do you do that? That sounds like some magic trick.
I literally, how I did it was I did it every time. I redirected myself every single time I was tempted not to. I think, the easy way would be like, I decided it one time and then I just skipped my way through every fearful story or thought and was like, nope. And it just bounced off, but it didn't. I had to literally redirect every time right back and say like, no, I'm not going to entertain that this, like, you filter it. You can't, here I am with an analogy and metaphor again, but I just can't help it.
All right.
If flying is safe, then that's the lens in which I read every single thing I see through. If it is negotiable, then my lenses change every single time.
Yeah.
So just like what you got, like you and Peter and everybody, who is seeing this, Captain M, everybody has their lens that they know flying is safe. So they filter everything through that. Well, I have access to believe the same. So I want to do that. And so that's what I did is I got the choice. Am I going to read this through my warped, scary fearful thinking, or am I going to pick up the truth that flying is safe?
Mm.
Go there.
That's good. That's some good stuff there. So, what else did you do? Crikey, I feel like I'm keep digging. There's no
keep going. I took so many notes over the last few months, friends. So I'm excited. Okay. I think additionally, for me, I also, if anyone's ever heard kind of this thought, but just had the anchor thought of what I was looking forward to the most that was on the other side of the flight. So for me going to Ireland, it was my baby sister seeing Ireland for the first time. And I knew I wanted to be present for that. The thought that comes with that is everything that stands in between today and that anchor thought happening is just getting you one step closer. They aren't barriers to joy. They're the very process in which to get there. So that helped me shift when that, I told you at the beginning, when that cabin door closes, I mean, it's just like the blood just leaves my body is how it used to be. But this time I was like, oh, that gets me closer. Like I'm going to see Anna love Ireland and I can't wait for that. And I think too, even when I took my test flight by myself, my anchor thought was every time I have flown, my like key thing is I used to get the Wi-Fi really quick and text my family and say, did you get this? And so they joke all the time. If they get a, did you get this? You know, they would know I was flying. And no, I told nobody in my family I was flying on that test flight in February. And so I knew my anchor thought was, I can't wait to get into the air and text them and say, did you get this? And when I did it, they lost they're like, are you flying? You know, it was the sweetest. And honestly, it was so great. And that was that anchor thought for Ireland. It was the next one. And I think, again, I guess I've just noticed my key phrase is redirecting. I don't think we have to have shame that we can maybe be pulled off of where our center is. It's just, are we going to develop the skill to come back to redirect, which to further the next thing that I had kind of thought of was like fear is a mean filter to view things. It changes the tint of everything. And it's also a borrowed emotion. I had a coach tell me one time that emotion isn't here for you yet. And what she meant by that is like, fear wasn't for me yet. I did not need to have fear. And so for flying, to be candid, if anything ever happened, all of the fear and talk about even turbulence or whatever it is, well, if it happens, you can be fearful then, but even still will be safe. But regardless, you can be fearful then, but it's not for you now. And so why would I want to change the tint of the entire process for an emotion that wasn't there for me yet? And so, but what was there was my sister being absolutely adorable, you know, freaking out that we're about to go to Ireland. And my other sister who doesn't like to sit in the middle being like, we gotta stop, you know, just, it was funny. And, you know, it's like my mom, so excited that her 3 daughters are going. So, you know, it's just, there was so much to be present for that I could have given to fear. Yes. And so I think again, but to be candid, the flight to Ireland, I probably redirected, no joke, in the first 4 hours, like truly like 70 times. Like I had to, my greatest work was to sit there and to redirect every thought. I listened my request, and I hope everybody will come back to the podcast or the Facebook group and tell you yes, is to make episode 44 and like the meditation type portion of the podcast that you do like an hour long, because I listened to the same like 11 minutes for 4 hours straight. I would just start it.
Oh my goodness.
I bet you there's more of us doing that, but because yeah, you're right. Like we were just over and over, because that is what I needed to support me to redirect my thoughts back to fear's not here for me yet. I don't need that. If there's a time I need it, my body's really good at reminding me I can get it, but it's not here for me. What was here was to stay present. And so I had these noise canceling headphones, which were a game changer. And I would redirect my thoughts, listen to that meditation, and just come back. And yeah, practicing that thought. Fear's not here for me yet. I don't need it right now. It's not going to serve.
Okay. Well, we are. I have been putting off doing a longer version of it because I was dreading. I only released it because I got nagged to put it on there.
I will nag again.
Yeah. But yes, I have been thinking about how do I do a longer version? Do I just speak slower? Do more pausing? I've just sit and focus on your own breathing for half an hour.
Yeah, right. It's longer because the music just plays for 45 extra minutes.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That is too funny.
So, yeah.
That is too. Let me, real quick, I'll go through a couple practical things of what that looks like for me. Was also just admitting that needing additional support. So whether that's letting the other people that you know or that you're traveling with just know, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. Maybe it's paying a little extra for a seat that feels the most comfortable, not as a stipulation, but just as a kindness to yourself. If you don't get it, you're still good. But if you do, that's a nice little, buffer and some bubble wrap on the whole thing. But then taking extra care of your body. This is really hard when you're feeling really anxious and you have that anticipatory anxiety as you want, you don't feel well. You can forget to be hydrated. You can forget to eat well. In fact, you may, because you're so tired, over consume caffeine that doesn't feel good in the midst of anxiety. And so hydrating well for especially one just in life, but especially those days leading up, eating good foods, limiting caffeine intake. For me, I would truly only, even if I was used to having more, I would only have one in the morning, and I would put that very far between like my flight times. I think also limiting the additional stress. Yourself, but if you're a last minute packer and you're fine with that, okay. But if it stresses you out, be kind to yourself and get ahead of the game, right? Because if you're going in rushed, or if you're like your arrival time is late, or you're packing your days with work all the way leading up, and then you expect yourself in 12 hours to turn around and be ready for something. That's just not setting yourself up for kindness. And so that was, those were all things that were like really powerful for me, was some game changers. And I'm going to be vulnerable and just this is fine. The other thing is I had a backpack full of some things just in case. One of them was an activity book, but it wasn't like a hard thinking one. It was like, for like kids, like a 10-year-old, like just literally the simplest crosswords and word searches. And because it was just easy and effortless. Noise canceling headphones, and that could be on the aircraft, but that can also just be prior to boarding, so you're not tempted to overhear like triggering thought or conversations or anything like that. I believe you say this in the course, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I created an album on my phone of just oxytocin mood booster type things, because our brains, I believe this is where I learned this, but it's to shoot off those same stress and anxiety signals at the same time as it's trying to shoot off oxytocin in a mood. It doesn't. So if you're looking at something like that oxytocin booster, it's going to be able to help limit that fear part of you. And so on that flight home, I was tempted to do that. And I went immediately and watched some, funny videos of my nieces and nephews and things that that helps, calm my body down.
Yes.
Episode 44. I can't, again, I'll go back to it I literally listened to that little middle part over and over. And so many. One of the other things, just to encourage you, that this may sound silly, and I hear you because I thought the same, but recommended obviously to dress the part. And what that looked like for me was it provided me with a whole different set of like just confidence I wasn't aware of, and truly walking in like, I can do this and I love to do this. I love to travel. I'm excited. Wearing clothes that feel good on your body, like that may sound, but if you're uncomfortable because your jeans are digging into, like, okay, then like don't wear those, because you're about to do something difficult for yourself. So like change, it's okay. So that was important. And then
so the tip is no difficult jeans. Is that it?
Truly. Yeah.
Okay. I got it. Yeah.
Yes. I know that sounds silly or difficult. Like if you're wearing like layers that when you sit down, they like pull and snug, or if your hair's down, you don't like it. Or I know. Yeah. If you're like, whatever it is, if you're wearing glasses, like if you wish you had your glasses, like just be mindful to lean on the side of comfort. And then I'll say it often. Please let the flight crew know that they are a majority of times very ready to be kind and let you meet, the pilots or the crew themselves. And on my way to Ireland, I had, obviously I let them know on both there and back. And I had joked, and my question was, is there going to be turbulence? And there were 3 of the pilots, and one of them said, like, no, it's going to be a pretty smooth, like flight out, like it's going to be pretty good. And I said, okay, well, if there is, my name's Kendra, and I'm sitting in 20A, and, kind of joking, but kind of being silly. Yeah. And I promise you, we hit turbulence about an hour in, very, very slight turbulence, but still. And he got on the actual speaker on that whole plane and said, this is for Kendra. We've hit a little, like, jokingly told, and it was wonderful. It was hilarious, but they love their job. They're proud of what they do. And even if they, sometimes you get, maybe they're just super competent, and I love to give my trust over to someone who's super confident in what they do. And so, there's more the flight, the takeoff list, Peter Higgins and all of episode 44, all those things. But
that's a good list. That's a good, you had a good bunch of things there you've done. There's a great strategy. So when you did the 30-day program, how did you approach it in terms of time of day, or how did, were you disciplined? What did you do?
I'm a coach by nature is one of the things, but listen, if it's just not on your calendar or scheduled into part of your day, then it's probably not going to take priority. So absolutely, I think if something is going to be priority, it has to be made priority. So I've really genuinely scheduled it into my days, 30-ish minutes. Sometimes it was less and more, but on average, just with scheduling the 30 days, I set a reminder on my phone. The other part is I recognize I didn't give myself the exact 30 days. I recognize sometimes life would happen and maybe I didn't get to it. So, if I didn't get down on myself, I just pick it up the next day and continue on. I printed out the pages that came. I also took a ton of notes on that, and I actually took those on the airplane with me, and would read those because there were so many things that were like so beautiful about that, whether practicing the thought of like the pilots have prepared for the worst case scenario or whatever those were. That's so comforting to read, but I genuinely scheduled it into my days. If it is priority, it'll show up as priority. And for me, that is where I really had to do it. Cause again, we're good to negotiate with ourselves. So I had done that for years. I was done negotiating. Yeah. So I made it a priority.
Yeah. Yeah, I wondered how you'd done it because I got a sense of, well, some people don't, they want an instant result. And I got a sense from you that you knew that you had to sort of plug away at it.
Yeah. And by the way, here's something encouraging. You will get a win at the end of each one of the days. It will you will get a result and you'll get some gratification. But if you want it to be the fullness of overcoming a fear, you didn't give it time, let yourself show up for yourself for 30 days. Cause that's the first step of evidence you're going to show up for yourself, right? Is to actually do the course and to go through and to listen and, and so if we want to build that endurance to last through a flight and, to have that mindset, great first step is to stay committed to doing the 30-day course.
Just a random thing, 30 days, but I remember the reason I did it was I did a 30-day program. I said, on how to set up 30-day programs. And I thought it was quite a good thing. And the guy that did it, the American guy, he literally just wandered around San Francisco filming himself on his phone, or he sometimes had a decent camera, chatting wherever he was. It was really low key. I paid $100 for it. Best $100 I spent, I think, because I just thought, well, it was so casual. I thought you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to have big fancy camera sets. Just try and talk naturally.
Yes.
And and I thought, but also it was a good test for me. So I'm always curious when someone's done it themselves on the receiving end to think what's it like? Because to me, to stick to something for 30 days actually does take a bit of effort, doesn't it?
It does. And it was so wonderful. And honestly, I finished the 30 days a couple months prior to even flying. And so that whole week before I flew, I literally put it back in my schedule to go back over those things that I had done. I flew out and I put Lovefly in here in Lovefly, and I scheduled it back in each day, and I didn't fly, and I put it in each day until I flew to make sure that stuff was back on the surface.
Very cool. Well, Kendra, I mean, that's been great. So what about a final mic drop bit of wisdom? What have you got?
Oh, final mic drop. Let's see.
A metaphor, an analogy.
Yeah, right. All the different things. Oh man. I think overall for me, I had to pre-decide that this is what I wanted to do. And that I truly didn't want fear to take over everything in my life, and that I was willing to feel any sensation to not be held back by fear. My goal, I kind of mentioned at the beginning, was never to just do all of this work and the first time I flew to just be 100% okay. You could still have a good flight and still feel all of these sensations. The goal was not to be ruled by fear, but instead to be willing to feel those so that I can live my life joyfully. And the more that we are willing to do that, then the more evidence that we get to stack up to say you can do this, and to be mindful of that. So hopefully this encourages others. And yeah, I'm still on my journey, still on mine.
No, that's nice. Thank you very much. That was lovely. Some really nice sound bites there, and lots of just very friendly, down to earth, practical wisdom. So thank you for that. And I really appreciate you giving your time today to give back to other humans, help them along.
Yeah. Thank you for doing it for me.
One last question. What's your next flight or thing?
Yeah, my next one will be to Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
I am a season pass holder to the parks, and so I'll be going down. Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kendra. And stay in touch in the Facebook group like you have been. And thank you again. And I'll let you know when this is out.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you, Paul.